Hi everyone, this is Rashmi Paudel. I'm doing my PhD at University of Constance, Germany, and today I will present to you one of my PhD project entitled Plants that have recently become more common within their native range are also more likely to be successful as naturalized aliens elsewhere. To start with brief introduction, as we know, species are changing their distribution naturally throughout the history of life because of different natural processes such as glaciations, evolutionary imbalance, and so on. However, because of increasing human pressure, particularly since the beginning of Great Anthropocene, these dynamics have accelerated dramatically and species are changing their distribution unnaturally. As a result, many species are drastically declining, not only in the population size but also in the range size. This is an example of a species called 𝗡𝘁𝘂𝗿𝗶𝗃 nodosa, which is native to Germany, and it has lost its range size in the red areas over the period from 1960 to 2017. And in our study, this type of species are referred as looser species at home or in their native range. However, not all the species are equally impacted. Some species even have benefited from the novel anthropogenic habitats and expanded their range size. This is another example of a species also native to Germany called 𝗡𝘁𝘂𝗿𝗹𝗶𝗍, and it has increased its range size over the period. And in our study, this type of species are referred as winner species at home. Concurrent with those dynamics in the native range, humans have intentionally or unintentionally introduced many species outside their native range, and some of them have established their self-sustaining population, and we call them naturalized alien species. Among the many underlying mechanisms for naturalization success, past studies regarding native range size have shown that the species with large native range or high occupancy are more likely to become naturalized elsewhere. However, how those historical occupancy in the native range and recent change in those occupancy over the period relates to naturalization success remains unexplored. That's why we want to answer the question that are the species that have increased their occupancy at home or the winners at home also the ones that have become widely naturalized elsewhere? Or to make it short, are the winners at home also winners elsewhere? To answer this question, we collected data for both native range distribution and the naturalization success. For the native range distribution, we have data from 10 different European regions, such as Austria, Denmark, Flanders, Germany, and so on. And for each region, for each species, we have information on their occupancy during the earlier time period and the later time period. For example, here for Austria, for more than 2000 species, we have their grid cell occupancy during earlier period, that is before 1990, and the later period, that is from 1990 to 2022. Then for the naturalization success, we used GLONASS database, that is Global Naturalized Alien Flora database. I think many of you are already familiar with this database, and this provides the comprehensive list of the naturalized alien vascular plants species for different regions throughout the globe, and from there I used the data for 920 non-overlapping regions around the globe. After collecting data for the occupancy of the species during earlier and the later time period, we calculated the change in occupancy of the species over the period, and for this we used 𝗡𝘁𝘂𝗿𝗶𝗍 method. Based on this method, as you see in the plot, we first fitted weighted linear regression between the logit transformed proportion of the grid cells during earlier time period and the later time period, and the standardized residuals refers to the change index. For example, here the red line refers to the decrease in occupancy for the species that is 𝗂𝗃𝗃 nodosa that I showed before, and the purple line refers to the increase in occupancy of the species 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗿𝗃 that I showed before. And here its dot refers to the species, and always the change in occupancy is corresponding with the other species that have same occupancy during the earlier time period. And similarly, we calculated the occupancy change for each species for each region. After this, moving to the analysis, for statistical analysis, we used Hodel model, which is also called zero-alter model, where naturalization success quantified is the number of GLONASS regions in which a species is naturalized was response variable. Early occupancy, that is the proportion of grid cells during earlier time period. Occupancy change index, that is change in occupancy between the available time period and their interaction, was explanatory variable. Then moving to the results, as I showed before, because the studied region differ in many aspects, we analyzed each region separately, and this is the result for Denmark. And here the point refers to the original data and the line refers to the predicted value of the model. In the x-axis, we have change in occupancy, and in the y-axis, we have naturalization success or number of regions where a species was naturalized. Furthermore, we classified the species into three different categories. The red one refers to those species that were common during the earlier time period, and the blue refers to those species that were comparatively rare during the earlier time period, and the golden for the intermediate species. And here we can see that with increasing occupancy change, the naturalization success also increased, and this is true for all three categories of the species. That means if the species has increased in occupancy since the earlier period, its naturalization was higher. Additionally, we can also see that the red species always has higher number of regions in compared to other groups of the species, meaning that the naturalization success was higher for species that were already common during the earlier time period. And the result is more or less similar for other regions as well, such as Austria, Flanders, Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, and also for the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic. But in these three regions, in addition to the previous results, we also found significant interaction between change in occupancy and the occupancy during earlier time period. You can also see quite high slope for the red line, meaning that if the species was already common during the earlier period and has become even more common, then it had higher naturalization success. And 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, which is a small region in northern France, and this is the only region where we didn't find any significant effect of the occupancy change in the naturalization success. Then moving to conclusion. To conclude from the above analysis and the results, we can conclude that the naturalization success was higher for species that were already common during the earlier time period. And if the species has increased in occupancy since the earlier period, its naturalization success was higher. And furthermore, species that were already common and have become even more common are more successful as naturalized plants elsewhere in the world. Or briefly, the winner species at home or in the native range are also winners somewhere else. The one smiling at the picture in the native range will also smile somewhere else. Thank you so much for listening. I would like to thank everyone who involved in this study. And if you are interested in this study, we also have preprint, so you can check this out. Thank you so much.